The Sunday brunch at Riverside Country Club was supposed to be a celebration. My brother Marcus had insisted we toast his daughter Jennifer's promotion to Chief Executive Officer of a regional marketing firm. At 28 she'd climbed fast and Marcus never missed a chance to remind everyone. I watched my daughter Sophie arrive, still in her grocery store uniform. She'd worked a double shift yesterday and had another tonight. The dark circles under her eyes spoke of exhaustion she tried to hide. "There's my successful granddaughter," Dad announced as Jennifer arrived. He stood to embrace her, his voice carrying across the dining room. "CEO at 28. I always knew you'd make something of yourself." Sophie slipped into the chair beside me. I squeezed her hand under the table. "Sorry I'm late," Sophie said quietly. The morning rush ran over. Marcus glanced at her uniform with disdain. "Still at the grocery store, Sophie?" "It pays the bills," Sophie replied evenly. Dad leaned back, swirling his scotch. "When I was your age I was managing a department. Your cousin's running a company. What's your excuse?" My jaw tightened but I kept my expression neutral. Sophie had heard variations of this speech countless times. "I'm working on things, Grandpa," Sophie said softly. "Working on things," Dad repeated with a dismissive laugh. "Jennifer was working on things too, but she actually achieved them. There's a difference between dreaming and doing." The waiter appeared. Dad ordered the most expensive steak without glancing at the prices. Marcus ordered lobster. Sophie asked for soup. "Just soup." Dad raised his eyebrows. "I'm paying." I ate before my shift. That was a lie. Her refrigerator had been empty when I visited Thursday. She was eating once daily to save money, helping with my rent after I'd supposedly lost my consulting contract 6 months ago. Dad launched into Jennifer's accomplishments, casting pointed glances at Sophie. The corner office. The company car. The speaking engagements. "And the salary," Marcus added. 6 figures base plus bonuses. Sophie's cheeks flushed. "What are you making, Sophie?" Dad asked. $12 an hour? "Dad, that's enough," I said quietly. "I'm making a point. The girl needs motivation. 26 years old, working as a cashier. When are you getting serious?" "I am serious about my future," Sophie whispered. Dad laughed. "Your cousin's already a CEO while you're just a cashier. Scanning groceries. That's not a future, sweetheart. That's treading water." I watched a tear form in the corner of Sophie's eye. She blinked rapidly, trying to force it back. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her water glass. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. The timing was perfect. "Interesting timing, Dad," I said calmly. "That retirement fund you asked me to manage last year? I transferred it back to your account this morning." "All of it?" His confusion deepened. "Why, you're getting excellent returns. The account's up 32%. I'm closing my client list, focusing on other ventures." I pulled up another screen. "Also, that country club membership you've had for 15 years? Check the owner's name." I turned my phone around, showing the property deed. Dad squinted at the screen, then paled. "That's your name?" "Yes. I purchased Riverside Country Club 8 months ago. Private sale." The table went silent. "You bought this country club?" Marcus said slowly. "The club, golf course, tennis courts, restaurant. It's been a solid investment." Dad set down his glass. "You said you were struggling." "I lost that contract. It freed time for other investments. Consulting was never my primary income." Sophie stared at me, tears forgotten. I'd kept this quiet from everyone. "Other investments," Dad repeated. "The country club is one of 5 properties I own. I also have commercial real estate and a venture capital fund focused on women-owned businesses." I paused. "Sophie's been helping me research investments. She has excellent instincts." That was true. Sophie reviewed business proposals on weekends, thinking it was volunteer work. I paid consulting fees into an investment account in her name. Marcus found his voice. "But you drive a 10-year-old Honda." "I like my Honda. And the apartment is in a building I own." I smiled. "I've never seen the point in flashy displays." Jennifer smiled. "Good for you, Aunt Sarah." Dad's face shifted from pale to red. "You let me think you were struggling. You assumed I was struggling." "I never said it. You saw the old car and drew conclusions." The waiter arrived with the meals. Dad stared at his steak. I continued, starting tomorrow I'm implementing changes at the club. Restructuring membership tiers and fees. We're also eliminating legacy membership transfers. Each generation will need to apply independently. Dad's membership had been a legacy transfer. That chain had just broken. That policy's been in place for 40 years, Dad said. And it created an insular environment. The board voted unanimously last week. Sophie was still processing everything, her soup untouched. I nudged her gently. Eat, sweetheart. It'll get cold. She picked up her spoon mechanically, her eyes still wide. Now about that cashier job, I said, looking at Dad. Sophie's been working there specifically at my request. I needed someone I trusted to conduct field research on retail operations and customer service workflows. She's been documenting everything, from inventory management to peak traffic patterns to employee satisfaction indicators. Sophie blinked. I have. All those notes you've been keeping in your phone about inefficiencies and customer complaints? That's research data. Very valuable research data, actually. I've been using it to consult with 3 different retail chains on operational improvements. I smiled at her. You're very good at identifying systemic problems. I just thought I was venting, Sophie said faintly. Constructive venting, I amended. The kind that comes with detailed observations and potential solutions. That's analysis, not venting. Marcus had barely touched his lobster. You're telling us you're some secret millionaire? Not secret. Just modest. There's a difference. I gestured around. This place is beautiful, but I don't need to eat here weekly to prove I can afford it. Dad had gone quiet, staring at his plate. Jennifer spoke. Half the stress of my job is maintaining appearances. The car, the clothes. It's exhausting. Then stop, I said. You're the CEO. You define what leadership looks like. The board expects certain standards. The board expects results. How you dress is secondary. I turned to Dad. That's the thing about actual success versus performance. One requires substance. The other just requires props. Sophie spoke. You've been supporting me this whole time. Those scholarship refunds. You earned those through research work. I formalized the compensation without mentioning it. I met her eyes. You were exhausting yourself trying to help me. I wasn't going to let you sacrifice your health. But I wanted to help you. You did help me. You are helping me, just not in the way you thought. I squeezed her hand again. The difference is you're getting paid for it now, and you can stop working doubles at the grocery store unless you genuinely want to continue the research project there. Dad finally found his voice. You humiliated me. In front of my family. No, Dad. You humiliated yourself by using my daughter as a prop in your ongoing need to rank everyone's worth by their job title and salary. I just corrected the factual inaccuracies in your assessment. I was trying to motivate her. You were trying to shame her. There's a difference. My voice remained calm but firm. Sophie works hard. She's intelligent, kind, and resourceful. The fact that she chose to help her struggling mother instead of chasing corporate promotions doesn't make her less valuable than Jennifer. It makes her compassionate. Jennifer nodded quietly, pushing her salad around her plate. Marcus cleared his throat. So what now? You're just going to lord this over us. Lord what? My financial portfolio? No, Marcus. I'm going to continue doing exactly what I've been doing. Living my life, making my investments, and supporting my daughter. The only thing that's changing is Dad's running commentary on our failures. I pulled up my email again, scrolling to a message I'd received that morning. Actually, Sophie, this might be a good time to mention that the venture capital fund I run is partnering with a startup accelerator program. They're looking for someone to manage retail and consumer services sector investments. It's a full-time position with benefits and equity participation. Sophie's eyes widened. Are you offering me a job? I'm telling you about an opportunity. Whether you apply is entirely up to you. The program director is expecting applications by Friday. I forwarded her the email. You'd be qualified even without our family connection. Your field research and analytical work over the past year make you a strong candidate. But I don't have a business degree. Neither do half the successful entrepreneurs I've funded. You have practical experience, critical thinking skills, and genuine insight into how businesses actually function at the ground level. That's worth more than a framed diploma. Dad pushed his plate away, the steak barely touched. I suppose you think you've proven some kind of point. I haven't proven anything, Dad. I've simply clarified the situation. You've spent years judging people based on surface-level markers of success while completely missing what actually matters. I finished my salmon, setting my fork down with a quiet click. Sophie could have been a CEO like Jennifer and still been miserable. Or she could be a cashier and be fulfilled. The job title is irrelevant compared to the person doing the job. Easy to say when you're secretly wealthy. Wealth doesn't change character, Dad. It just reveals it. I had money when you were lecturing me about financial responsibility, and I'll have money tomorrow when you're processing this conversation. The difference is now you know. And knowing changes how you see me, which says everything about how you measure worth. The table fell silent again. Around us, other families enjoyed their Sunday brunch, laughing and talking, completely unaware of the quiet earthquake happening at our table. Sophie's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked at me with something between shock and hope. This position pays more than I've made in the past 2 years combined. Plus equity. If the startups succeed, you'll own a percentage of very valuable companies. I smiled. But again, only if you're interested. No pressure. Jennifer leaned forward. Can I ask you something, Aunt Sarah? Why no? Why reveal everything today? I considered the question carefully. Because I watched my daughter blink back tears at a family brunch, trying not to cry because her grandfather mocked her job and her worth. That's not something I'm willing to tolerate anymore, family or not. Dad's face was unreadable now, somewhere between anger and shame. I've spent years keeping quiet about my success because I didn't want money to complicate family relationships. But silence enabled you to create a hierarchy that hurt people I love. So yes, I'm speaking up. And yes, things will be different now. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Different how? Different in that I won't be attending events where my daughter is treated as less than. Different in that I'll be setting boundaries around acceptable behavior. Different in that my financial support for various family members will continue only in relationships built on mutual respect. Dad's head snapped up. Financial support? Did you think that cruise you took last year was entirely funded by your pension? Or that the down payment assistance Marcus received for his house came from his savings? I kept my voice neutral. I've been quietly helping family members for years. Anonymously, usually through third-party channels. Because I wanted to help, not to gain leverage. The implication hung in the air. I had leverage now whether I wanted it or not. Sophie stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. For a moment I thought she was leaving. Instead she walked around the table and hugged me tight and fierce. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything. Not just the money. For believing I was worth defending." I hugged her back, feeling tears prick my own eyes now. "Always, sweetheart. Always." When she returned to her seat, her shoulders were straighter, her head held higher. The exhausted cashier had transformed into someone who knew her worth, regardless of what name tag she wore. Dad stood slowly, pulling out his wallet. "I should pay for lunch." "It's already covered," I said quietly. "Owner's privilege." He nodded stiffly, then walked toward the exit without another word. Marcus followed after a moment's hesitation, throwing an awkward wave in our direction. Jennifer remained, a small smile on her face. That was the most epic thing I've ever witnessed at a family function. "I didn't plan it this way," I admitted. "Maybe not. But it was perfect timing." She raised her water glass. "To Aunt Sarah, queen of the long game." Sophie raised hers too. "And to actual success, not just the appearance of it." I clinked my glass against theirs, feeling lighter than I had in months. The secret was out. The careful facade had crumbled. And somehow I felt more myself than I had in years. "So," Sophie said, pulling up the job posting on her phone, "tell me more about this venture capital position." I smiled, settling back in my chair. "Well, it starts with understanding that the best investments aren't always the flashiest ones." As we talked, I noticed the country club manager approaching, tablet in hand, with questions about the upcoming renovation budget. Sophie watched the interaction with new eyes, seeing not just her mother, but the woman who owned this entire operation. When the manager left, Sophie shook her head in wonder. "How did I not know?" "Because I didn't want you to. I wanted you to build your own path without the pressure of my expectations or my money influencing your choices." I paused. Though I'm realizing now that trying to protect you from that knowledge also left you vulnerable to other people's judgments. I'm glad I know now, Sophie said firmly. And I'm applying for that position. Good. The director will be lucky to have you. I gathered my purse, leaving a generous tip for our waiter, even though I technically employed him. Now how about we skip the rest of this family gathering and go do something actually fun? Like what? Like visiting that farmer's market I mentioned. Then maybe we tour the new property I'm considering purchasing downtown. It's a historic building that would make an excellent mixed-use development. I could use your eye for practical design. Sophie's smile was radiant now, all traces of tears gone. That sounds perfect. As we walked through the country club toward the exit, I caught several members glancing our way with new recognition. The word would spread quickly now. The quiet woman with the old Honda was actually the new owner. The struggling single mother was actually a successful investor. Let them talk. I'd spent enough years worrying about other people's perceptions. Sophie linked her arm through mine as we stepped into the afternoon sunshine. Mom? For the record, I think you're amazing. Right back at you, sweetheart. CO or cashier or anything in between. And I meant every word. I sat at the far end with my two kids, Daniel and Sophie. Daniel was 16, tall and thin, wearing a button-down shirt from Goodwill that I'd helped him pick out last week. Sophie was 13, her dress a hand-me-down from a neighbor. They looked nice, clean, presentable. But next to Marcus's kids, Tyler and Madison, dripping in designer labels, the difference was obvious. Marcus had been making comments all afternoon. Little digs. Subtle enough that most people missed them, but I caught every single one. Must be nice not having to worry about private school tuition, he'd said earlier, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Public school is so much simpler. I'd smiled and nodded. Let it go. But then came dessert, and Marcus had apparently decided subtle wasn't working anymore. Tyler, Madison, tell everyone about Paris, Marcus announced, leaning back in his chair with that satisfied smile I'd known since childhood. They just got back last week. 5-star hotels, the Louvre, Versailles. Spent 2 weeks soaking up culture. Tyler, 14 and already mimicking his father's smugness, launched into a detailed description of their vacation. The restaurants, the shopping on the Champs-Élysées, the private tour guide. I watched Daniel's jaw tighten. My son had been working nights at a grocery store for the past 4 months, stocking shelves from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. on school nights, handing me most of his paycheck to help with our rent. He'd never complained. Not once. And where did your kids go this summer, Sarah? Marcus's wife, Jennifer, asked, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She knew exactly where we'd gone. Nowhere. We stayed local, I said evenly. Daniel had his job. Sophie had soccer camp. Soccer camp, Marcus repeated like I'd said something hilarious. Right. The free one at the Park District. Sophie looked down at her plate. Daniel's hand tightened around his fork. Nothing wrong with free programs, I said quietly. Sophie learned a lot. Of course, Marcus said, waving his hand dismissively. Not everyone can afford the European experience. Different priorities. Some people focus on, he paused, looking at Daniel. Working at grocery stores. Building character, I suppose. My mother, sitting near Marcus, laughed a little too loudly. She'd always favored him, the successful son. The one who'd married well, climbed the corporate ladder, bought the big house in the right suburb. Daniel works very hard, I said, keeping my voice level. I'm proud of him. Oh, I'm sure, Marcus said. Minimum wage builds character. Much better than, say, summer internships at investment firms. He gestured to Tyler. Tyler spent his summer learning about portfolio management. Networking with my colleagues. Real career building. I saw Daniel's face flush. He stared at his dessert, untouched. Then Marcus went for the kill. Your kids shop at thrift stores while mine vacation in Europe. He laughed, looking around the table for validation. I mean, that's just reality, right? Different tax brackets, different lifestyles. Nothing to be ashamed of, Sarah. You're doing your best with what you have. My son's face fell. I watched 16 years of quiet dignity crumble in his eyes. The kid who worked 40-hour weeks on top of school. Who never asked for anything. Who handed me his paychecks without hesitation. Who wore second-hand clothes without complaint. Something in his expression broke my heart and steeled my resolve at the same time. I pulled out my phone, checking my emails like I just remembered something. The table had moved on to other conversations, but Marcus kept glancing at me, satisfied with his performance. I stood up calmly. About those vacations, I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. The table went quiet. The trust fund paying for them? I'm the trustee. And your beach house mortgage? I just bought it. Marcus's smile froze. What? Tomorrow at noon, I continued, still calm, you'll learn why you should have read the trust documents our grandfather left, the ones I've been managing for 15 years. Sarah, what are you talking about? My mother's voice had an edge of panic. I looked at Marcus. You know the monthly distributions you get? The ones that paid for Paris, Tyler's private school, this house's down payment, that new Tesla in your driveway. That's my inheritance, Marcus said, but his voice wavered. No, I said. It's our grandfather's trust. He left me as the sole trustee when I turned 25. You get monthly distributions at my discretion. I've approved every single payment for 15 years without ever mentioning my role. I thought family should support family. Jennifer had gone pale. Marcus, what is she talking about? The beach house in South Haven? I continued. The one you bought 5 years ago? You took out a mortgage for $400,000. Last month, the bank sold that mortgage to a private investment group. I'm the private investment group. Marcus stood up. You're lying. I pulled up my email and turned the phone toward him. Tomorrow at noon you're meeting with Patterson and Associates. They're the trust attorneys. They'll explain exactly how the trust works, including the clause that allows me to reduce or eliminate distributions if I determine they're not being used appropriately. You can't do that, Marcus said, but he sounded uncertain. I absolutely can. Grandfather's instructions were specific. The money is meant to support family members who demonstrate financial responsibility, humility, and kindness, not to fund arrogance. My mother grabbed my arm. Sarah, don't be ridiculous. Marcus deserves that money. Why? I asked simply. Is he successful? He's successful because I approved $85,000 in distributions every year for the past 15 years. That's $1.2 million, Mother. Money I could have used. Money that could have paid for Daniel's college fund. For Sophie's activities. For a house instead of the apartment we rent. The table was silent. Daniel stared at me with wide eyes. Instead, I continued, I approved every distribution Marcus requested. The Europe trips. The private schools. The country club membership. The investment in his business 5 years ago. Remember that, Marcus? $50,000 when your startup needed capital? That came from the trust, too. I didn't know you controlled it, Marcus whispered. No, you didn't. Because I never told you. Because I thought we were family. Because when grandfather made me trustee, he told me the money should flow quietly without ego, supporting those who needed it. Sarah, Jennifer said desperately, Marcus didn't mean. Yes, he did, I said. He meant every word. Just like he's meant every condescending comment for the past decade. Every reminder that his kids go to private school. Every mention of vacations we can't afford. Every subtle dig about our clothes, our car, our neighborhood. I looked at Daniel. You want to know why we shop at thrift stores? Because I chose to live on my teacher's salary alone. Every penny from the trust I directed to Marcus, because I thought supporting family mattered more than pride. Your teacher's salary? My mother looked confused. I'm a high school English teacher, Mom. I make $48,000 a year. The trust generates approximately $200,000 annually. I could take half and still have plenty for Marcus. I could have bought a house years ago. Could have sent my kids to private school. Could have taken them to Europe. Why didn't you? Sophie asked quietly. Because I wanted you two to understand the value of work. Of humility. Of not judging people by their tax brackets. I looked at Marcus. Lessons apparently not everyone learns. Marcus sat down heavily. What are you going to do? Tomorrow the attorneys will present you with modified distribution terms. You'll receive $25,000 a year going forward. Enough to supplement your actual income, which is considerable. Not enough to fund your current lifestyle. $25,000? Jennifer's voice cracked. We can't maintain this house on. Exactly, I said. So you'll need to make choices. Like whether you really need a house this size. Whether private school is essential. Whether Europe is a priority. I turned to the mortgage papers on my phone. The beach house mortgage. Monthly payments are $3,200. I'm calling the loan due in full in 60 days. 60 days? We can't pay $400,000 in 60 days. Then you'll sell it. Or refinance with another bank if they'll approve you without trust income guarantees. I paused. Or you could ask nicely. Explain why you think you deserve an extension. Try some humility. Marcus's face was red. You're doing this because I made one comment? One comment. I almost laughed. Marcus, you've been making comments for 10 years. Every holiday. Every birthday. Every family gathering. You've made my children feel less than because we don't live your lifestyle. A lifestyle I funded while raising 2 kids on a teacher's salary. I didn't know, he said weakly. You didn't care to know. You saw me struggling and felt superior instead of curious. Felt entitled instead of grateful. My mother found her voice. Sarah, this is cruel. He's your brother. I'm his sister, I replied. The one he just humiliated in front of the entire family. Again. I looked at Daniel. The one whose son works 40 hours a week to help with rent while Marcus's son interns at daddy's firm for experience. I started gathering our things. We're leaving. Daniel, Sophie, get your coats. Wait, Marcus said. Can we talk about this? Tomorrow. At the attorney's office. Noon. I helped Sophie with her jacket. Bring your financial statements. All of them, income, expenses, assets, debts. The attorneys will need to review everything before restructuring the distributions. Restructuring. Hope crept into his voice. The trust is meant to support family, not enable arrogance. If you can demonstrate that you understand that, if you can show genuine change, we'll discuss appropriate support levels. I met his eyes. But Marcus, the days of blank checks while you mock my children are over. We walked toward the door. Daniel hadn't said a word since my revelation. In the car, silence stretched for several minutes. Then Daniel spoke. You've been giving him money all this time? Yes. For 15 years? Yes. While he trailed off. While we lived modestly. Yes. Sophie leaned forward from the back seat. Why? I drove for a moment before answering. Because when Grandpa died, he told me the money was for family. He made me promise to use it to help the people I loved. I thought Marcus needed it more than we did. He was starting his business, starting his family. I thought I was doing the right thing. Was it? Daniel asked. The right thing? I don't know anymore, I admitted. I wanted you both to grow up understanding that money isn't everything. That character matters. Work ethic matters. Kindness matters. I think I succeeded at that. Look at you, Daniel, 16 years old, working nights to help your family. Never complaining. That's character. Uncle Marcus's kids wouldn't do that, Sophie said quietly. No, I agreed. They wouldn't. And that's the difference money makes when it comes without earning it. Daniel was quiet for another minute. Then he asked, Are you really going to cut him off? I'm going to restructure the distributions to be appropriate. He has a good job. A high salary. He doesn't need $85,000 a year from the trust. That was enabling, not helping. What will you do with the extra money? Sophie asked. I smiled. Well, there's this thing called a college fund. And maybe we could look at a small house. Nothing fancy. But something ours. And Europe? Daniel asked, a hint of humor in his voice. Maybe someday. When we've saved for it ourselves. So it means something. We drove home to our small apartment. The one with the thrift store furniture and the second-hand everything. And for the first time in years I felt no shame about it. Only pride in the 2 remarkable kids sitting beside me. Tomorrow Marcus would learn the details. He'd see the numbers, the terms, the conditions. He'd understand exactly how the past 15 years had been funded. But tonight I sat with my children and explained their grandfather's trust. How he'd built a small fortune through careful saving and smart investing. How he'd chosen me as trustee because he trusted my judgment. How I'd honored that trust by supporting family, even when that family didn't appreciate it. Will Uncle Marcus hate you? Sophie asked. Maybe for a while. But eventually, if he's smart, he'll understand. Money without gratitude is just numbers. Family without respect is just biology. Daniel nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Mom, I think Grandpa chose the right person. And sitting in our modest living room wearing our thrift store clothes, I finally believed he had. The next day at noon, Marcus learned exactly how his lifestyle had been subsidized. The attorneys explained every distribution, every payment, every quiet transfer I'd approved over 15 years. He learned he'd owe his beach house mortgage in full in 60 days. He learned his annual distribution would drop to $25,000. He learned that continued support required annual financial reviews and proof of charitable giving. Most importantly, he learned that the sister he'd mocked had been his benefactor all along. 2 months later, Marcus sold the beach house. 6 months later, Tyler transferred to public school. A year later, Marcus started volunteering at a food bank, and for the first time in our adult lives, he asked about my life instead of talking about his. It took time. Real change always does. But the day Marcus showed up at our apartment with a college fund contribution for Daniel, matching the amount Daniel had earned that year working nights, I knew something had shifted. He didn't apologize with words. He apologized with understanding. With humility. With the kind of family support that goes both ways. And that's worth more than any trust fund distribution could ever be. The birthday party invitation sat on my kitchen counter. Expensive cardstock with gold embossing. My sister-in-law had spared no expense for her son's 8th birthday at the country club. I watched my daughters, Emma age 6 and Lily, age 9, wrapping the science kit they'd chosen with their allowance money. My husband, James, was running late from work. He'd promised to meet us at the party, but his new position at the firm had him working longer hours. His career was finally taking off after years of steady climbing. We arrived at the country club 15 minutes early. My brother-in-law, Marcus, stood near the ballroom entrance with his wife, Jennifer, both wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Oh, you actually came," Jennifer said, her smile cold. Marcus looked at the gift in Lily's hands, wrapped in discount store paper. His expression shifted to disgust. "Tell your kids to skip the party," he said directly to me, loud enough that several nearby guests turned to look. "We don't want their dollar store gifts." Jennifer giggled, covering her mouth with her manicured hand. "Marcus, don't be mean," she said, but her tone suggested she found it hilarious rather than inappropriate. My daughters stood perfectly still, their faces neutral. I'd raised them to be composed in difficult situations, and they didn't disappoint me now. Lily simply adjusted her grip on the present, and Emma glanced up at me with calm, questioning eyes. I felt the familiar weight of my purse against my shoulder, containing the folder of documents I'd been reviewing earlier that day. James had asked me to look over some papers about his promotion, wanting my opinion on the details before he signed anything. "Understood," I said quietly, maintaining eye contact with Marcus. "Girls, let's find somewhere to sit." We moved past them into the ballroom. The space was decorated with elaborate balloon sculptures and a dessert table that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Children ran around in designer outfits while their parents clustered in groups, champagne glasses in hand. My daughters sat down at a table near the back, still holding their gift. They pulled out the books they'd brought, settling in to read while other children played. They were used to being overlooked at family gatherings. I sat down beside them and opened my purse, pulling out the folder. Inside were the official documents from James's company, detailing his new role as Regional Director of Operations. The position came with significant authority over multiple branches, including the one where Marcus worked as a senior sales associate. I scanned through the organizational charts James had included, finding Marcus's name listed under the new reporting structure. As of Monday morning, Marcus would report directly to a branch manager who reported to James. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jennifer approached our table, her heels clicking on the polished floor. "You can leave the gift on the table by the door," she said, gesturing dismissively. "We're sorting them by value later." "Sorting by value?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Well, yes," she said, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "We want to make sure our son understands the importance of appreciating generous gifts from successful family members. We'll probably donate the cheaper items to charity." She walked away before I could respond, joining a group of her friends who kept glancing in our direction and whispering. The party continued around us. Children played games I assumed cost a fortune to organize. A magician performed tricks that left the young audience amazed. Through it all, my daughters sat quietly, reading their books and occasionally watching the festivities with detached interest. Marcus made a speech thanking everyone for coming, making pointed references to family who truly support us, and people who understand quality. Several guests looked uncomfortable, but no one said anything. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Running even later. Emergency meeting just got called. Should be there in an hour. How are the girls? I typed back, they're fine. We're fine. Take your time. Another text came through, this one from James's assistant. Reminder. Regional Director announcement goes company-wide Monday morning at 8 a.m. All branch managers have been notified to prepare their teams. I glanced at Marcus, who was now bragging to a group of men about his recent sales numbers and his track record at the firm. He had no idea what was coming. The gift opening segment began. Designer clothes, expensive electronics, gift cards for outrageous amounts. Each gift was greeted with exaggerated enthusiasm from Jennifer. When they reached our gift, Marcus picked it up with 2 fingers. "Oh look, the discount store special," he announced to laughter. My nephew opened it carefully. Inside was the science kit. His eyes lit up genuinely. "Cool," he said quietly. "We'll add that to the donation pile," Jennifer said quickly, taking it despite his protest. "You have much better gifts, sweetheart." I watched my daughters. They showed no reaction, simply turning back to their books. I'd taught them that other people's rudeness reflected on those people, not on us. The party wound down. Parents began collecting their children, thanking Marcus and Jennifer for the elaborate celebration. We stood to leave, my daughters gathering their books. "Leaving so soon?" Marcus asked, approaching us. "I thought you'd at least stay for cake." "Oh wait, I forgot. You probably need to get the girls to bed early. School night and all, even though it's Saturday." He laughed at his own joke. "We have plans," I said simply. "Right, plans," Jennifer added, rolling her eyes. "Let me guess, dinner at the food court?" I smiled politely. "Something like that." As we walked toward the exit, I texted James. "You should probably give Marcus a heads up about Monday." His response. "Already decided not to. He'll find out with everyone else. Company policy." We were almost to the car when Marcus called out, "Hey, wait up." He jogged over, slightly breathless. "Look, maybe I was a bit harsh earlier. You know how it is, maintaining standards and everything." It wasn't an apology. I nodded. "It's fine, Marcus." "Good. So we're okay? No hard feelings." "No hard feelings." He smiled, relieved. "Hey, did James mention changes at the firm? I heard rumors about restructuring." "He might have mentioned something," I said carefully. "You should probably check your email Monday morning. I think there's a company-wide announcement planned." "Oh yeah." Marcus perked up. "Think it's good news? Maybe promotions." "For some people, definitely," I said. "For others, it might be an adjustment period." He didn't catch the implication. "Well, I've been killing it in sales, so I'm not worried. My numbers speak for themselves." "I'm sure they do," I agreed. We said goodbye and drove home. The girls were quiet in the back seat, processing the evening in their own ways. "Mom," Lily asked after a few minutes, "why are Uncle Marcus and Aunt Jennifer always so mean?" I considered my answer carefully. Some people measure their worth by comparing themselves to others. They need to feel superior to feel good about themselves. "That sounds exhausting," Emma observed. "It probably is," I agreed. James arrived home around 9, loosening his tie as he walked through the door. "How was the party?" "Eventful," I said, handing him the folder of documents. "You might want to review these again before Monday." He flipped through the pages, pausing at the organizational chart. "Marcus is going to lose his mind when he sees this." "Probably," I agreed. "But that's not your problem. You earned this position fair and square." "Did he say anything tonight?" I filled him in on the evening's events, including the gift incident and Marcus's parting question about company changes. James shook his head. "I offered to give him a heads up last week. He cut me off, said he didn't have time to chat about my boring job updates." His exact words. "Well, Monday should be interesting then," I said. The weekend passed normally. Sunday evening, James spent an hour preparing for his first official day as regional director. He'd start by introducing himself to all the branch managers via video conference, then spend the week visiting each location in person. Marcus's branch was scheduled for Tuesday afternoon. Monday morning at exactly 8 a.m. the company-wide email went out. James forwarded me a copy. Leadership changes. Regional director appointments. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Marcus. I didn't answer. Neither did James. Texts from Marcus followed. Is this a joke? James is my new boss? Call me back. We need to talk. Then Jennifer. How dare you not tell us? We deserved advance notice. James silenced his phone and headed to his office for the video conference. The messages from Marcus and Jennifer continued throughout the morning, evolving from shock to anger to attempts at reconciliation. We should talk about Saturday. Maybe I overreacted. Jennifer feels terrible about the gift situation. Can we meet for lunch this week? Clear the air? James emerged from his office around noon looking satisfied. That went well. Everyone seems on board, except one person, but that's to be expected. Let me guess, I said. Marcus requested a private meeting. I scheduled him for tomorrow at 2 right before I tour his branch. Figured we should address whatever issues he has before I meet with his team. Tuesday afternoon James called me from his car. You won't believe what just happened. Try me, I said. Marcus spent the first 10 minutes of our meeting pretending Saturday never happened. Then he spent the next 20 minutes explaining why he deserves a promotion to branch manager. He actually said his family connections should count for something. What did you say? I told him that family connections are exactly why I can't show him any favoritism. Everything has to be by the book based solely on performance metrics. Then I reviewed his actual numbers. And he's middle of the pack. Good but not exceptional. Definitely not branch manager material yet. I heard the smile in his voice. How did he take it? About as well as you'd expect. He tried to argue, then tried to bring up Saturday again, apologizing profusely. I told him that personal family matters don't influence my professional decisions, which seemed to confuse him. He's used to connections mattering more than competence, I observed. Well, he's going to have to adjust to a merit-based system now, James said. The tour of his branch was enlightening, though. His team has mixed feelings about him. Some respect him, others find him difficult to work with. That evening my phone buzzed with a call from Jennifer. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. Hello. We need to talk, she said, her voice strained. About everything. Okay, I said simply. Marcus is upset. He thinks James is punishing him because of the party. James doesn't operate that way, I said. His professional decisions are based on professional criteria. But family should count for something. Jennifer insisted. It does, I agreed. It means James has to be even more careful to treat Marcus fairly, without any appearance of favoritism. She was quiet for a moment. We'd like to apologize. For Saturday. We were inappropriate. You were, I confirmed. The girls, she continued, are they okay? Marcus feels bad about what he said. I glanced at my daughters doing homework at the kitchen table, completely unbothered by the previous week's events. They're fine. They've already forgotten about it. Good, that's good, Jennifer said, sounding relieved. Maybe we can all have dinner sometime? Start over. Maybe, I said noncommittally. We'll see how things go. After I hung up, Emma looked up from her math worksheet. Was that Aunt Jennifer? Yes. Is she sorry about the party? She says she is. Emma considered this. Do you believe her? I think she's sorry about the consequences, I said carefully. Whether she's sorry about her behavior is harder to say. Lily closed her book. Dad's really Uncle Marcus's boss now? He is. That must be weird for Uncle Marcus, she observed. Probably, I agreed. Good, Lily said matter-of-factly, returning to her reading. James came home that evening with stories about his branch visits, the challenges he'd identified, and his plans for improving regional performance. Marcus's name came up only in the context of professional development opportunities James was considering for the whole team. Are you going to tell him about Saturday? I asked. Clear the air. James shook his head. It's not relevant to work. What happened at that party was between family members. What happens at the office is between a regional director and his team. I'm keeping those separate. Very diplomatic, I observed. Very necessary, he corrected. If I let personal feelings influence professional decisions, I'd be exactly the kind of leader I don't want to be. The following week settled into a new normal. Marcus remained professional at work, though James reported he seemed subdued. Jennifer's calls became less frequent, and when we did interact at family gatherings, she was noticeably more careful with her words. The science kit we'd given my nephew turned up at our house a month later. Marcus dropped it off personally, looking uncomfortable. He really did like it, Marcus said, handing me the box. But Jennifer already donated it. I bought him another one. Thought maybe your girls would enjoy this one. It was an olive branch of sorts, awkward but genuine. Thank you, I said, accepting it. That's thoughtful. He nodded, shifting his weight. Look, about the party. I was a jerk. No excuse for it. No, there wasn't, I agreed. Yeah, he said quietly. Anyway, I'm working on it. Being better, I mean. After he left, I gave the science kit to my daughters. They accepted it with the same calm grace they'd shown throughout the entire situation. People can change, I told them. Sometimes it just takes the right motivation. Like having Dad as his boss? Emma asked. Like realizing that treating people well matters more than expensive gifts, I corrected, though we all knew the truth was probably somewhere in between. That Saturday we took the girls to the park and spent the afternoon doing science experiments from the kit. Simple, unremarkable, perfect. My phone buzzed with a photo from Jennifer. Our nephew doing one of the experiments, captioned, "Sometimes the best gifts come in unexpected packages." It wasn't an admission of being wrong, but it was close enough. James saw me looking. Progress. Maybe, I said. Time will tell. My sister smirked. Your daughter will end up a nobody like you. Her husband chuckled. My daughter just nodded, quiet. I sipped my coffee and said, funny. This nobody doesn't need to borrow rent money every month. My sister's face dropped. Then calmly I pulled out my phone. The Wednesday afternoon sun filtered through the cafe windows as I sat across from my sister Victoria and her husband Marcus at the Meridian, their favorite upscale coffee spot, where lattes cost $8 and the clientele discussed stock portfolios over artisanal pastries. My 12-year-old daughter Emma sat beside me, her eyes fixed on her sketchbook, while their 15-year-old son Tyler scrolled through his phone, occasionally showing his father expensive sneakers he wanted. Victoria had insisted on this meeting, texting me 3 times about important family discussions and how we never spend quality time together anymore. I'd agreed mostly because Emma rarely saw her cousin, and despite everything, I wanted her to have family connections. So Emma, Victoria began, her voice dripping with fake concern as she adjusted her designer sunglasses on top of her head. What are your plans for high school? I hope you're considering something practical. Not everyone can afford fancy private schools like Tyler attends. She said this while signaling the waiter for another refill of her specialty coffee. Emma looked up briefly, then back down at her drawing. I'm thinking about art programs, Aunt Victoria. Marcus snorted into his espresso. Art? That's adorable. Victoria, remember when your sister thought she could make it as a graphic designer? He gestured at me dismissively. Look how that turned out, working from home in her little apartment. Victoria touched his arm, laughing. Marcus, be nice. Though you're not wrong. I've been telling her for years that she needs to get a real office job. Benefits. Stability. You know, actual security for Emma. I took another sip of my coffee, letting them continue. Emma seems like a sweet girl, Victoria went on, but without proper guidance and resources she'll end up struggling just like her mother. It's not her fault. Some people just don't have the drive to succeed. Tyler looked up from his phone. Dad, can I get the new gaming system? Everyone at school has one. Of course, son, Marcus said proudly. We believe in giving our children the best opportunities. Right, Victoria? My sister nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. It's why we work so hard. Tyler attends Westbrook Academy, takes private tennis lessons, and has a tutor for SAT prep. We're investing in his future. He turned to Emma. Sweetheart, I know your mother does her best with what she has. But you should know that success requires more than just hope. It requires resources, connections, and the right schools. Emma's pencil stopped moving. I watched her shoulders tense slightly. Your daughter will end up a nobody like you, Victoria said, her smile sharp. No offense, of course. I'm just being realistic. Marcus chuckled, nodding in agreement. It's generational. Parents who succeed raise successful children. It's just how it works. Emma looked at me, her young face trying to stay neutral. She nodded quietly, accepting their assessment like she'd been trained to accept all of life's unfairness. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Funny, I said, my voice calm and even. This nobody doesn't need to borrow rent money every month. Victoria's smile froze. Marcus stopped mid-sip. What are you talking about? Victoria asked, her voice losing its condescending lilt. I pulled out my phone, opening my banking app with deliberate slowness. The transfers. Every month for the past 18 months. Sometimes twice a month. Let's see. I scrolled through my transaction history, watching Victoria's expression shift from confusion to dawning horror. February, you needed $2,000 for rent. March, $3,500 for Marcus's car payment and your electric bill that had gone to collections. April, you borrowed $1,500 for Tyler's school trip that you'd already committed to. May, another $2,000 for rent, plus $800 for the BMW lease payment. That was temporary, Marcus interrupted, his face reddening, his hand gripping his coffee cup so tightly his knuckles went white. Business investments. Cash flow management. Every entrepreneur goes through this phase. Of course, I agreed pleasantly. Which is why you've paid back exactly $0 of the $48,000 you've borrowed. Tyler's eyes widened. He looked at his father, then his mother. Victoria laughed nervously. You said those were family loans. No rush to pay them back. You said family helps family. I did say that, I confirmed. And I meant it. I'm not asking for the money back. I'm just clarifying something for Emma's benefit, since we're discussing success and resources. I turned to my daughter. Emma, do you remember when Aunt Victoria called last Tuesday, the day before this coffee meeting? Emma nodded slowly. What did she need? She asked if you could help with their mortgage payment, Emma said quietly. She said the bank was calling. Victoria's face flushed. That's private family business. You're embarrassing us in front of the children. You just told my 12-year-old daughter she'd end up a nobody, I replied, my tone unchanged. In front of your son. In public. But discussing factual financial transactions is where we draw the privacy line. Marcus leaned forward. Listen, we're going through a temporary setback. My business expansion required capital. Once it takes off. Your business expansion, I repeated. The one you started 14 months ago? How much have you invested in it so far? Silence. Because I know how much you've borrowed from me for it. Roughly $22,000 of that 48. The rest was for basic living expenses. Rent, utilities, car payments, Tyler's school tuition. Tyler put his phone down completely, staring at his parents. We were going to pay you back, Victoria said, her voice small. I believe you intended to, I said. But that's not really the point of this conversation. The point is success, resources, and opportunities. You wanted to educate Emma about how the world works, so let me add some context. I turned to Emma. Sweetheart, your Aunt Victoria drives a BMW leased at $800 a month. They rent a 4-bedroom house in Riverside Estates for $4,000 monthly. Tyler's private school costs $32,000 a year. Marcus's business has overhead costs of about $6,000 monthly. Together, their lifestyle costs roughly $12,000 every month. Emma listened, her artist's mind clearly calculating. How much do they earn? She asked. That's inappropriate, Marcus snapped. Marcus earns about $4,500 monthly from his consulting work, I continued calmly. Victoria's boutique manager position pays $3,800. Together, they bring in roughly $8,300 a month to maintain a lifestyle that costs $12,000. That's private information, Victoria hissed. You asked me to co-sign Tyler's school loan last year, I reminded her. I saw all your financial documents. You made me your emergency contact at the bank. I have access to your account notifications because you needed help managing overdrafts. Tyler's face had gone pale. Dad, you told me we were rich. We are doing fine, Marcus said firmly. This is just creative financial management. I nodded. Creative financial management. That's one term for it. Another is living substantially beyond your means while borrowing from family members you publicly belittle. This is cruel, Victoria whispered. Why are you doing this? You told my daughter she'd end up a nobody, I said simply. I'm providing educational context, since we're apparently having teaching moments today. I looked at Emma. Your aunt and uncle have chosen to prioritize appearance over stability. There's nothing wrong with that choice, but it comes with consequences. The consequence is debt, stress, and dependency on people they claim to be superior to. And what about you? Marcus challenged. Living in your small apartment working from home? That's success. I own my apartment outright, I replied. I bought it 8 years ago. No mortgage. My freelance design business grossed $218,000 last year. After expenses and taxes, I netted about $142,000. My monthly costs, including everything Emma needs, run about $4,500. I save roughly $6,000 a month. Victoria's mouth opened. No sound came out. The thing is, I continued, I don't need to prove success through expensive cars or prestigious zip codes. I don't need to impress Tyler's classmates' parents or maintain appearances at country club events I can't afford. You never told me you made that much, Victoria said. You never asked. You assumed. You saw my modest apartment, my 10-year-old Honda, and my work-from-home schedule, and you created a narrative that made you feel better about borrowing money you couldn't pay back. Emma spoke up, her voice stronger now. Mom, is that why you never seem stressed about money? That's part of it, I confirmed. The other part is living within my means, not beyond them. Marcus stood abruptly. We don't have to listen to this. You're right, I agreed. You can leave any time. But before you do, I should mention that the bank called me yesterday. They noticed the account activity and the loan co-signing. They wanted to verify some information about your mortgage assistance request. Victoria grabbed Marcus's arm. What mortgage assistance request? The one Marcus submitted 3 weeks ago, I said, listing me as a financial guarantor without asking me first. The color drained from Marcus's face. I declined, obviously, I continued. I also asked the bank to remove me from all your accounts and notifications. I'm not your financial safety net anymore. You can't do that, Victoria said, panic creeping into her voice. We have payments due. Tyler's school tuition is next week. You'll figure it out, I said. Successful people with drive always do. Isn't that what you said? I stood gathering my bag. Emma closed her sketchbook and stood beside me. Emma, Victoria said desperately, I didn't mean what I said. You're a talented girl. Really? Thank you, Aunt Victoria, Emma said politely. As we walked toward the cafe door, I heard Marcus frantically talking to Victoria about credit cards and payment plans. Outside, Emma looked up at me. Mom, why didn't you ever tell Aunt Victoria to stop asking for money? Because family helps family, I said. But family also doesn't weaponize help to feel superior. There's a difference between supporting someone and enabling them to maintain a fantasy. Are we really not going to help them anymore? I didn't say that, I clarified. I said I'm not their automatic safety net. If they genuinely need help and ask respectfully, I'll consider it. But the days of them treating me like a failure while cashing my checks are over. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Can I ask you something? Always. Why do you live the way you do? If you make good money, why not a bigger apartment or a new car? I smiled. Because things don't make me happy. Security does. Knowing I can handle emergencies, save for your college, retire comfortably, and help people I care about without stress. That's worth more than impressing strangers. So Aunt Victoria isn't actually successful? Your aunt has successfully created an image of success, I said carefully. But image and reality are different things. Real success is sustainability. It's being able to maintain your lifestyle without depending on others or drowning in debt. We reached our Honda. Emma ran her hand along the door, tracing a small dent near the handle that had been there for 3 years. I used to be embarrassed by this car, she admitted. Tyler always made comments about it when you'd pick me up from their house. He'd say things like, "Is that thing even safe?" Or, "My dad says old cars are for people who can't manage money." And now I'm thinking about how many of Tyler's school tuition payments it represents. And how their fancy BMW is actually leased with money they don't have. I laughed, genuinely proud of her quick understanding. That's my analytical girl. You're learning to see past the surface. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with text from Victoria. Apologies, excuses, requests to talk. I'd respond eventually, but not today. Today, Emma needed to process what she'd learned about success, family, and the difference between looking rich and being stable. Mom, Emma said as we pulled into our apartment complex parking lot. Yes, sweetie. I don't think I'm going to be a nobody. I parked the car and turned to face her. You never were going to be. Being somebody isn't about money or status. It's about knowing your worth and not needing others' validation to prove it. Emma smiled. Aunt Victoria needs a lot of validation. She does. And that's sad, really, because she's so busy trying to prove her worth to others that she can't see her actual value. We walked up to our second-floor apartment, the familiar creak of the third step greeting us. Inside, Emma immediately went to her art corner by the window, the space where the afternoon light hit perfectly for drawing, and pulled out her sketchbook. What are you drawing? I asked, setting my bag down and starting to prepare dinner. A reminder, she said, her pencil already moving across the page. About the difference between looking successful and being successful. I'm drawing 2 houses. One is huge and fancy but built on sand. The other is smaller but has a foundation made of stone. I watched her sketch, her young hands confident with the pencil, her artistic metaphor more insightful than she probably realized. Whatever she created in life would be built on truth, not image, on stability, not debt, on genuine accomplishment, not borrowed credibility. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus asking if we could forget this afternoon happened. I typed back a simple response. We can move forward when you're ready to be honest about where you are and respectful about where others are. Emma looked up. Was that Aunt Victoria? Uncle Marcus. Are you going to help them? Probably, I admitted. But on different terms. Terms that don't require me to accept disrespect as the price of family connection. Emma nodded and returned to her drawing. In that moment I knew she understood. Success wasn't about proving yourself to people who'd already decided to underestimate you. It was about building a life so secure that their opinions became irrelevant. And my daughter, the future nobody, was learning that lesson 12 years earlier than I had. I never thought the day would come when my own sister would stand in my daughter's bedroom and demand that she give it up. But that is exactly what happened last Saturday in front of 12 guests, during what was supposed to be a casual housewarming gathering. The way the afternoon unfolded after that moment is something I still think about, because it changed the way everyone in my family sees my daughter forever. Let me start from the beginning, because none of this makes sense without understanding who my sister is and how she has always seen herself in relation to everyone around her. My sister Diane is 2 years older than me. She married young, had 3 children by the time she was 28, and spent the next decade making sure every single person in our family understood just how hard her life was. She was the martyr, the one who sacrificed everything, the one who gave up her dreams to raise her kids. Because of that, she believed, truly believed, that everyone else owed her something. Sympathy, gratitude, comfort, space. Everything. When I had my daughter Lily, things shifted slightly. Diane was no longer the only mother in the family. But she never saw Lily as anything more than a quiet, soft-spoken little girl who followed adults around and smiled politely. To Diane, Lily was harmless. Invisible almost. And that suited Diane just fine. What Diane never paid attention to was what Lily was doing when she was not at family gatherings. She was competing. Lily started gymnastics when she was 6. Not recreational gymnastics, competitive gymnastics. The kind that requires early mornings, long practices, and a level of focus most adults cannot sustain. By the time she was 8, she was placing in regional competitions. By 9, she had qualified for state. By 10, she had won her first national junior title. I kept most of this quiet, not because I was hiding it but because Lily herself never wanted to talk about it at family dinners. She was not the kind of child who needed validation from others. She earned her trophies, put them on her shelf, and moved on to the next goal. When family members asked what she did for fun, she would shrug and say, "I train." And that was the end of the conversation for her. The prize money was the part that surprised even me. Gymnastics competitions at the national level carry real payouts for top finishers. Regional golds typically come with anywhere from $200 to $500, depending on the organization and the level of competition. National titles pay significantly more. It is not life-changing money for an adult, but for an 11-year-old with no expenses and no desire to spend money on clothes, gadgets, or anything else her peers were obsessed with. It accumulated quietly and steadily over the years. Lily kept track of every dollar in a small notebook she stored in her desk drawer. She knew exactly how much she had earned, exactly how much she had spent, and exactly how much was left. With a stubbornness I can only describe as remarkable, she decided she wanted to use that money herself on her own terms, for something that was entirely hers. She asked me at age 9 if she could design her own bedroom. Not redecorate, design. From scratch. I said yes, mostly because I wanted to see what she would do. What she did was research paint colors, furniture layouts, lighting options, and storage solutions for weeks. He came to me with a printed budget. She compared prices online. She made decisions with a seriousness that made me laugh and cry at the same time. When it was finished, her room looked like something out of a magazine. Clean lines, soft colors, a reading nook she built herself with help from a local carpenter, and a trophy cabinet she designed to display every single award she had ever won. By any standard, it was a beautiful room. And it was entirely hers, paid for entirely by her. Now about the house tour. I had just moved into a new place. Nothing extravagant. A 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, the kind of place families move into when they want stability and good schools. I invited family over for a casual Saturday afternoon to see the place. Diane came with her husband and their 3 kids, ages 7, 9, and 12. My parents came. A few cousins. It was meant to be relaxed. Food, drinks, people walking through the rooms and saying nice things. Everything was fine until someone suggested we all walk through the house together. My parents went first, commenting on the kitchen and living room. My father noted the quality of the countertops. My mother asked about the neighborhood and nearby school district. Diane trailed behind, already scanning everything with that particular expression she gets when she is calculating how something compares to her own life. Her kids ran ahead, barely looking at anything. Lily walked beside me, quiet as always, hands in her pockets. She had already seen the floor plan before I signed the lease and had opinions about the layout that turned out to be remarkably practical. We reached the hallway where the bedrooms were. My room was first, simple and functional. A bed, a dresser, a nightstand with a lamp. Then the guest room. Diane glanced into it briefly, noted its plainness, and moved on without comment. Then at the end of the hall, Lily's room. I opened the door. The room caught the afternoon light in a way that made it glow. The reading nook was visible from the doorway, tucked under a window with soft cushions and a stack of books. The trophy cabinet stood along one wall, glass-fronted, each award visible and neatly arranged. The bed was made with precision. The whole space felt calm and intentional, like a place someone genuinely lived and thought in. There was a brief silence as people took it in. Then Diane spoke. "This is ridiculous," she said, not quietly. Her voice carried the way it always does when she wants to be heard. "Your daughter gets a room like this? My kids share a room that is half this size. This is completely unfair." I opened my mouth to respond, but Diane was already moving forward. "She needs to switch," Diane continued, turning to me with the kind of firmness she usually reserves for arguments she has already decided she is going to win. "Lily should take the smaller room. My kids need more space. You can rearrange things." The room went quiet. My parents exchanged a glance. The cousins looked at the floor. Diane's husband shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. He almost never does. Lily, who had been standing quietly near the door, looked up at Diane. She did not look angry. She did not look hurt. If anything, she looked mildly amused, like someone who had just been told something that did not apply to her. "I designed this room," Lily said. Her voice was calm and even. "I paid for it with my competition money. Every piece of furniture, the paint, the nook, all of it came from prizes I won. So it's not really something that can just be reassigned." Diane stared at her. "Competition money? You're 11. How much could that possibly be?" Lily did not answer the question directly. Instead, she walked to the trophy cabinet and opened the glass door. She pointed to the awards on the top shelf. "These are from nationals," she said. Each one came with a payout. The cabinet itself cost $400. The reading nook cost $1,200. The furniture was another $2,000. I have receipts for all of it in a folder in my desk. She closed the cabinet door and turned back to the room. "Your kids can't even keep their beds made," she added without any cruelty in her tone. It was simply a fact stated plainly. "This room stays the way it is because I built it. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Diane's face went through several stages in the span of about 10 seconds. Shock first. Then embarrassment. Then something close to anger, though she seemed to swallow it before it fully formed. She looked at me as if expecting me to intervene or contradict what Lily had just said. I shook my head slightly. There was nothing to contradict. My mother was the first to break the silence. She stepped closer to the trophy cabinet and looked at the awards inside. "How many of these are national titles?" she asked Lily. "4," Lily said. "And 6 regional golds." My mother turned to me and I could see on her face that she was recalculating something. She had known Lily competed. She had seen the occasional trophy on a shelf. But she had never seen them all together and she had never heard the full scope of what Lily had accomplished laid out so clearly. One of my cousins pulled out her phone. "Wait," she said. "National Junior Gymnastics Champion? What's your full name? I want to look this up." Lily told her. My cousin typed it in. Within 30 seconds she pulled up a Gymnastics Federation database with Lily's competition history. Every event, every placement, every score. It was all public record. "She's not kidding," my cousin said, turning the screen toward the group. 4 national titles. Multiple podium finishes. This is legitimate. Diane looked at the phone screen. Then she looked at Lily. Then she looked at me again. "I didn't know," she said, and for once her voice was not loud. The rest of the afternoon passed without incident. Diane did not bring up the room again. Her kids, who had been running through the house with little interest in anything, eventually wandered into Lily's room on their own and spent 20 minutes looking at the trophies and asking Lily about her competitions. She answered their questions patiently and kindly, as she always does with younger kids. When Diane and her family left that evening, she paused at the door. She did not apologize. She is not the kind of person who does that easily, and I did not expect her to. But she looked at me and said quietly, "I didn't realize she was serious about it." I nodded. "She's been serious about it for 5 years," I said. Diane held my gaze for a moment, then turned and walked to the car, where her husband and kids were already waiting. In the days that followed, things shifted in small ways. My mother called me the next morning and asked for more details about Lily's competition schedule. He wanted to come to the next one. She sounded different on the phone. Quieter than usual. The way people sound when they realize they have been missing something important for a long time and are trying to figure out how. My cousin shared the Gymnastics Federation link with several other family members, and by midweek, a small group chat had formed where people were asking about upcoming events and travel logistics. Someone even looked into purchasing a banner to hold up at the next competition. It was, in its own way, a small and late awakening, but it was genuine. Diane texted me once. A short message that simply said, "Can you send me her competition schedule? I want to bring the kids to watch." There was no apology attached and no explanation for why she had never asked before. I did not expect either. Diane processes things slowly and she does it privately. But the fact that she reached out at all told me something had shifted for her. She had seen something that Saturday afternoon that she could not unsee, and she was trying in her own limited way to adjust. I sent it to her without comment. Lily, for her part, did not change at all. She went to practice the next morning at her usual time. She came home, ate dinner, and worked on a school project at her desk. When I told her that Diane wanted to come to her next competition, she shrugged and said, "That's fine. But she has to actually watch this time, not just stand in the lobby." I laughed. It was the closest thing to a dig she has ever made, and even then, it was delivered with a small smile rather than any real edge. That is who my daughter is. She does not need people to believe in her before she moves forward. She does not need approval to keep going. She earns what she has, builds what she wants, and lets the work speak for itself. There is something rare in a child like that. Something most adults spend years trying to develop and never quite manage. A quiet, unshakable confidence that does not depend on how others see her. It is not arrogance. It is simply a girl who has learned, through years of early mornings, hard losses, and harder wins, that the only opinion that truly matters on any given day is her own. And on that particular Saturday afternoon, in that particular room, it spoke louder than anything Diane could have said. The trophy cabinet is still there. She added one more award to it last week. A gold medal from a regional qualifier she won by the largest margin of the year. She did not mention it at dinner. She simply placed it on the shelf in the room she designed and went back to her homework.